The Vietnam War is an American name for a war that the U.S. fought in Southeast Asia from 1954 until 1975. In this conflict, the U.S. won almost every battle, but it was unable to win the war. To the Americans, the conflict was part of the worldwide. Before this was the Cold War, but off topic of that was just off topic. Against the spread of communism to their Vietnam's communist enemies, it was a American war or the war of resistance against American aggression. It was also a civil war between the Vietnam communists and the South Vietnam government and its supporters. Other countries were involved in the war. The Vietnam communists were armed by China, which supplied troops by the Soviet Union, Australia, New Zealand, Thailand, and the Philippines and South Korea. All sent soldiers to fight for South Vietnam. The war was also spilled out into the neighborhood to Laos and Cambodia. The Vietnam War was a long and bloody. By then, 58,200 U.S. soldiers were killed or missing in action. Far more Vietnam died, including 4 million civilian, more than 1 million communist soldiers, and 250,000 South Vietnam soldiers. So that was rough, really a rough number. Not as the other wars including. But yeah, the war was mostly, gave most of the soldiers scarring events. They, like, in this picture right here, most people had to get served off in a helicopter. But, we tried our very hardest to fight against these people, but it didn't work out well. Now, these are the ships they used in Vietnam. I'm not sure what side, but they did use these ships. And also, the aftermath of Vietnam is Vietnam was now united, but the country has been devastated by the war, deep division remaining. Hundreds of thousands of anti-communists were sent to re-educate camps. To 60,000 undesirable were executed. Communist was imposed as the southern economy was brought under state control. Now you're gonna watch a little of this clip. Yeah, it would kind of. Okay. So, number one for the question of Vietnam vets. How old were you when Vietnam showed up or when you got in service?
I went in service 17.
17. Okay,
1965.
Okay. So, number two, after the war, what was your next move?
My next move, as a job-related move,
Yeah.
I went to work on CB and Q River out of Galesburg, Illinois.
Number three, what was your duty in Vietnam? You can list.
I had several duties in Vietnam, actually. I was stationed at Queen Yan. I was stationed at Da Nang. My duty was to protect the service.
Okay, number four, what was your relationship with other soldiers?
My relationship with other soldiers is fairly common with any people, body, just friendly and taking care of them, and they're taking care of me.
Okay, number 5. How many years did you work in the service for?
I was in the service for 4 years,
Okay.
Army.
Number 6. What was your rank in Vietnam War?
I was only a private E1 because I got budgeted. I got a little trouble.
Okay, number 7. Did you get trained before the war?
Yeah, I got trained, some infantry training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
Okay, number 8. What was the food like there?
Compared to our food now, I guess it was alright, fair. They kept us alive.
Okay, number 9. Who was the president back then in your timeline?
Lyndon Baines Johnson was the president in that era.
Okay, number 10. What kinds of weapons did you guys have back then?
We had 45s, 9mm, M16A1, M16. Basically, that was what my usage was. Hand grenades, sulfur grenades, and basically that's all I used. That's all I carried.
Okay, number 11. What did you guys wear in the war?
We wore khakis, brown on brown, green underwear, brown underwear.
Okay, number 12. How many booby traps were you there on your travels?
I probably was seen maybe 3, 4, 5 of those. Pits with bungee sticks in them with human waste that was in there that would poison your bloodstream if it punctured you with that on it. Swing come off with like bamboo, another bungee trap, and then basically that's 2 of them. Then basically that's it, I guess. 2 or 3. It's been a long time. But anyway.
Yes. Okay, number 13. Why do you think the war started in the first place?
To make the South Vietnamese become a democracy country, like Korea. One's a democracy and the other was communist, but the overall factor, I've heard through the grapevine as I served, that it was more politically on gold. They had a lot of gold. And I'm not sure that that's true or not, but that's my belief, one of them, along with politics.
Well, Asia had a lot of gold back
Oh yeah, there's like millions of tons of gold over, I guess.
Okay, number 14. Which president do you think helped out in the war the most in your timeline, most of it?
I think Nixon, the last president after Lyndon Ray Johnson, helped to end the war, and that's basically it, 1975, he ended it.
Alright, number 15. Why do you think we decided to make a stop to the war?
I personally don't think we was going anywhere with the making South Vietnam a democracy country, and that's basically it. And too many lives was being lost at that particular time for no good reason. They was just being slaughtered, more or less. So that's my opinion on it, and that's well, I think I stand behind that. I don't know. Anyway.
Okay, number 16. What was the lesson you learned after the war?
Lesson I learned after the war,
Yeah.
or when I served the war, and
That can be any.
well, being humble to people, being honest, do not kill, do not steal. One of the commandments in the Bible, and I learned to follow some of those. And I'm not saying I'm true to all of them, but I try. But that's what I learned. Yeah. Honor each person as you want to be honored.
That's true. Number 17. What was your task when you were there?
My task when I was there, I had, like I said, I had kind of multiple tasks. I had some in Queen Yon. And basically I was stationed in a supply unit, and we delivered supplies and stuff to different units around the area, Ho Chi Minh Trail, and here and there in convoys and stuff. But stationed sometime in Da Nang, which it was protecting the territory going out on search and destroy missions with the squads and the platoons, and basically that's it. It's to protect, serve and protect.
What was your most important task?
Oh, that was my
Oh, okay. Okay, number 18. Would you go back and fight the war again if it was your opinion?
I don't think I would. Probably would, maybe, if it would do a different turn. It would have a different turn. Different Geneva Convention, whatever. The rules of the war is a little bit laxed on us because we're stricter than other countries are on the rules of the war. And then, yeah, probably go back and try to help that turn.
Well, that's it for the questions. Would you like to show the video your old school?
My old school?
Yeah, your old school photo.
Oh yeah, here's my old school photo when I first went in at 17 years old. I recommend it for anybody. Not at 17, but.
Well, that was the vet of Vietnam. Hope you guys enjoy that. Oh, President John F. Kennedy in in January 1961, John F. Kennedy became President of the United States. It was important for Kennedy, a young and experienced president, to appear to be a strong opponent of communists. He increased aids to South Vietnam. Under Kennedy, the number of U.S. advisors grew from 685 to 16,700. Despite this assistance, the situation in South Vietnam worsened due to the misrule of President Dai Van or something. And so that led up to his assassination, but that's too off the war. So if you know, Vietnam divided, like when, I guess something to do with French with them. We had a leader or something, I'm not sure, whatever it is, but on topic, Vietnam is a narrow 1,240 miles long country in Southeast Asia, with China to the north and Cambodia and Laos to the west, and something else with that. Now, other things is, the country had a long tradition of resistant foreign rules, including year struggles. General Craig's-Ten Arm, who replaced Westmoreland as U.S. commander in Vietnam in 1968, had very different ideas about how to fight the war. He called a halt to Westmoreland's large-scale search and destroy mission arms and was to clear and hold the outside, providing security from population. He used small patrol whose role was to cut the Viet Cong and the NWA off the people. Also, President Nixon helped reducing the U.S. troop levels. In 1969, Nixon announced the first reduction in U.S. troops level 25,000. So yeah, 25,000 in June, followed by 60,000 in December. At the same time, he increased fundings for the ARVN, which grew in size from 427,000 men in 1968 to 516,000 in 1971. Now, after the war, the aftermath of the United States, the Vietnam War caused deep division in the United States, especially for the generations that lived through the war. There are still arguments about what went wrong. What everybody agreed was that the U.S. had to avoid another Vietnam. In a 1980 speech to veterans, U.S. President Ronald Reagan claimed that his had led a Vietnam syndrome, which weakened the Americans' will to stand up to aggress for the veterans. Also, was caused when the bombing happened. So, if you were wondering about it, this was causally about the bombing. But in February 1669, 2 months after becoming president, Nixon widened the war by ordering the bombing of Cambodia to hit the NVA system of base camps. Since Cambodia was neutral country, Nixon kept bombing in secret from Congress and American journalists. Now, Nixon hoped that his visit to China would lead him to negative, and instead, during Easter 1972, Northern Vietnam launched a massive new offense, sending 200,000 NVA troops in South Vietnam. Grappled on success because so many U.S. ground troops had been hit. On March 29, 1973, the last remaining U.S. combat troops left Vietnam. The survivals of President Thieu's government depended on continuing U.S. military and fight in 1974, when Congress cut off the aid, South Korea was doomed. In December 1974, Pham Van Dong, Prime Minister of North Vietnam, predicted the Americans will not come back even if you offer them candy. I just want to say one thing. Thanks for Peter Crossma, because if I would never got this information if it was not a book. But thank you for watching. And my favorite thing about Vietnam was about their loss and also the facts about cool Vietnam. So yeah, thanks again for this book I got. It helped out a lot for this. So if this wasn't here, I would never have this. So I just want to point that out, because this would mostly be copyrighted if I didn't have this in here.